Hey guys, Saf here with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and in this part we are going to be looking at part 2 of the 6.51.1, it's a very long number, patch notes breakdown, and in this part we're going to look specifically at the new hard mode dungeons for Spider, Dragon, Finite, and Ice Golem. Now some of these have got large bugs at the moment, which could change some of the details that I release here, but I'm pretty confident that it won't. The ones to call out basically at the moment, Spider seems to be doing twice the amount of damage than it should when double hits or with Hex or with some other thing happens. It looks like the Spiderlings technically die but don't die just yet, and then the second hit kills them again, and then you get double the amount of that 3% that kind of kills the Spiderling. So there's a potential that a lot of different Spider teams that have been pushed out there in the creation sphere, in the Discords and on Reddit and all these kind of things, a lot of them might not work once they bug fix this. The other major bug fix to talk about is the Finite shield is currently always taking your maximum HP, and it shouldn't. Basically, it should only do it when the Divine Shield is up. This is, from what I can see, a coding error, as well as the Spider, I think, is a typo in the coding error. But I'll leave it up to the experts over in Playroom to fix that. But I'm pretty sure they just accidentally forgot to tell the Finite not to decrease your max HP. In terms of the Dragon Ice Golem, they're kind of bug-free mostly at the moment. I haven't seen any major bugs being talked about for those two dungeons. So yeah, so those might have an impact. But yeah, in this video, we're going to talk about the hard mode dungeons. If you have been living under a rock and you don't know what we're talking about, they've released new versions of the bosses for the main 4 dungeons we started off in Raid Shadow Legends. Obviously, the normal rates still remain. You can still run normal if you want. But now we've got 10 stages of hard mode. And each boss has had some or a few mechanical changes, some more than others. Ice Golem and Finite are significantly different. Spider and I feel like Dragon are reasonably the same strategies. They haven't changed too much and people are getting on with them. Finite, for me, I spent a number of hours on stream the other night, is absolutely horrific. So you can access them by going into the game, get into hard mode, cool. They drop the same sets, but the difference is now we have the ability to drop mythical artifacts. I don't know if it shows here anywhere. I don't think it does. Doesn't seem to show that it can drop mythical artifacts from my understanding. There you go, mythical banner. So you can get mythical artifacts from these new dungeons. So we're going to look at the drop rates in this video. But first, what I want to go through is the mechanical changes or the mechanics of the new bosses. So I should say with this kind of breakdown, I'm using the information from the client that basically reads the static information. So it is subject to sort of any changes that the game developers in Playroom decide to do. And it's obviously not official information coming from Playroom. So it's my interpretation of the code, which is normally quite accurate. Although every now and then I have a few points of difference that I've overlooked, but generally the information here, I've triple checked it with different people and I've double checked my numbers with different parts of the community, and these are the numbers we've got to. So let's just cover off hard mode dungeons. The first thing to note is that it's the same energy requirement as stage 25 normal. So if you're currently running stage 25 for all of your different dungeons, then it doesn't cost you any more energy to go up to the hard stages if you can do it just as fast or just as efficient, or you feel like you want the challenge. There is also a brand new wave configurations for all of the dungeon stages. We can see some newer champions such as Riho, Bone Spear is in some of the waves. We've got Skrunk in some of the waves as well. So they are kind of like all the waves have changed configurations, the numbers. It's kind of flipped a little bit. Stage 10 hard for Dragon is now much harder than stage 10 for Finite, where Finite stage 25 normal was one of the hardest waves in the game. All stage 10s are void affinity, so if you can get to stage 10, you shouldn't have any concerns about this champion doesn't work as well on this affinity because of different reasons, like we do on stage 24 and stage 25 dungeons, where most people run stage 25 Finite because Allure is a better affinity. And finally, just to note on clan versus clan points, these hard mode stages will increase the amount of points you gain per run. That is, stages 1 to 9 are going to go for up to 350 points. And stage 10 is now 400 points for clan versus clan. However, Dragon is still half that rate for some unknown reason over in Playroom. God knows why. I have no idea why Dragon is penalized as it currently is. That this is increased from 300 at stage 25 in the current normal dungeons. So what I would definitely recommend to people, if you are a professional clan versus clanner, if you're a competitive player, get your Spider team sorted for Tuesday, because it is 33% more clan versus clan points per run. It's quite a significant number. Now let's just talk about this passive that did cause a bit of a stir in the community, and I immediately, when I looked at it, thought it wasn't going to be as significant as people actually thought it would be. And I'm sort of correct in what I was saying. So for anyone who doesn't know, There's a new passive on all of these hard mode bosses where the higher the awakening level of your champion, the more damage and damage taken is changing. So if you are 6-star awakened, you will deal 50% more damage. If you're 6-star awakened, you will take 25% less damage, and it scales down. So it's something like a 3-star awakened gets you like 17% or 14%, something like that number. I think it's 2.5, 2.5, then 5% for the rest for damage, which obviously screams pay to win, screams huge amounts of damage. It's absolutely pay to win to start with. I'll clarify that. It's a pay to win mechanic that doesn't need to be there, but it's also not a barrier to entry because I don't actually think it's going to impact a lot of the challenges. And the reason why I said this is because I never thought it would actually apply to the main sources of success and the main problems of failure. So what I mean by that is we don't generally hit the boss for direct damage anymore because of different mechanics. Either they've got extremely high defense rate or they've got some sort of caps or potentials or something of that nature, which means that it's actually not possible. So for example, the way we kill, say, Ice Golem in 25 at the moment is we poison it to death. This passive here will not work on debuff based damages. So when we talk about increases damage output, we are talking about the actual champion damage that I do when I use my A1 ability. It will probably apply to War Master damage. That's probably the more pressing issue, but that's also subject to defense numbers, right? So if you're dealing 30,000 damage from War Master, then you're only going to deal, 15,000 more. So it's significant, but it's not essential. So the key thing to take away from this Awakened Weakness passive is the damage gain can only be applied to direct damage, which means that poison, HP burn, reflect, and including the smite debuff, they don't gain from this passive. And likewise, the damage you take is only applicable to the direct damage that those bosses deal to you. So if they deal poison damage, such as Dragon, including poison activation, the passive will not reduce the poison damage. If you've taken HP burn damage, it will not reduce that. If you're taking reflect damage in any content, you will not reduce the damage. So that's an important thing to note. If the boss hits you with his direct attack ability, then yes, you're going to gain an innate strengthen buff. I think the damage reduction is probably more valuable than the damage output personally. It's pay to win, but don't be concerned about it being a barrier to entry. I don't think it actually has that much significant impact. So let's talk about the Tainted Hellraiser. This is the dragon changes. So the main thing that this boss has changed with, it's added a few more poisons and it hits a bit harder and he's given himself an increased attack buff. The mechanics are pretty much the same. You go in there, you poison it to death and it dies in the breath. Make sure you take the breath down so you don't get stunned. The same concepts apply. Now he does hit harder because all of the stats are much harder. We'll talk about the stats once we've gone through the mechanics of the boss and just before we talk about the drop rates. But essentially, they've scaled the attack, which means it hits harder. So that's the thing you have to account for. It's going to hit harder. You need to resist the poisons probably, and that's about it. But in terms of his multipliers, the A1, his Withering Swipe, is a 3 times attack multiplier. The A2, the Mephitic Fire, is 3.4 times attack. Now, in terms of the Fire Breath mechanic, after he has done his sort of the bar, you've taken the bar down, that ability is based on your HP, and it takes 25% of your HP, and then it increases by 1 times however many times you've used that ability. So if you take 3 fire breaths, it's times 3 on top of that. It does ignore 100% of your defense as well. So eventually it will kill you, but most of the time you're probably not going to face more than 2 of those breaths. Now, some things you don't see in the game, passive abilities. The poison damage on the boss is reduced by 60%. It's not noted anywhere in the game. That passive doesn't exist in any boss guide or any text. I don't know why they don't do it, but it's important to note that if you're dealing damage to the boss, he's going to deal 60% less of that damage that he takes. So if you're putting 5% on the boss, it's not going to deal 5% of his HP. It's going to deal 5% times 0.4. It's important. I don't know why they don't list it. There's also got that 10% maximum HP cap, and Smite Brimstone damage normally does 25% of the boss's HP. It actually does 25% of the boss's HP times 0.7 loss. So effectively, you only deal 30% of that 25% as well. So these things are important things to note about how different mechanics work on the boss, how you deal damage. And again, talking about that awakening damage, if you're dealing maximum HP, well, 50% of 10%, well, I can't exceed the 10%. So it doesn't matter if I do 100% more, I'm still going to hit the 10% cap. So it's not that important. Now, talking about Finite got some significant changes. Firstly, you can't turn meter reduction him. Secondly, you need almost like double the amount of stacks. It goes up to 21. Freeze now can drop his turn meter, but it's quite hard to build in. And also when you attack his shield, you lose maximum HP. He destroys your maximum HP. And his A2 also now gives decreased defense. So it's actually an insanely overtuned boss fight at the moment. I've been talking with Parva about different strategies and different things. He's been working great wonders to try and bring it down. But so far, we're finding a very, very niche, very, very champion-specific team that can't even beat the kind of 3-minute marker. So I don't know what we're going to see with this. Maybe there'll be some adjustments. Maybe we'll find a way to beat it. Maybe there'll be some champions that come out that really make a difference. Right now, this is the hardest boss of all 4. This is really difficult. But you can see why. The A1 has got 4 times attack. So it's 33% stronger than the dragon attack. The A2 is a 5 times attack, which is even like 66% stronger. And of course, if you don't breach the shield, he attacks before he does an ability. That damage is based on your HP, and then it's multiplied by 0.05, and then by the number of stacks remaining on the shield. So if you leave up 21 stacks, you're probably going to get one shot. The heal that he gets is also 10% with a 5% bonus per stack. So you really kind of need to break that shield, otherwise he's going to keep healing. If you can't keep the shield down and the turn meter down, you need heal reduction. Otherwise, you're just going to lose this fight. There is a bug at the moment, as I mentioned. You shouldn't be able to lose maximum HP when you're attacking him normally without the shield up, but it is applying. They forgot to include the condition in the code. Again, this boss has a minus 60% damage, incoming damage from poison. He's also got that 10% cap. He's also got the 70% smite brimstone damage. Now, I should say, despite these poison debuffs, I still think poison is one of the best way to kill these bosses, just because you can use someone like a Theodore or a Dark Hail or someone of that nature and just get this easy access to damage because the defense numbers are quite high. Now, let's just talk about the freeze mechanics in a few details. These are from discoveries that I did on my stream. The first thing to note, it places a debuff, then removes it. So if you have not got enough debuff slots, you've got like 10 poisons, the freeze won't place, which means you can't drop the turn meter. So you have to be mindful, if you are going for a strategy that's going to drop the turn meter permanently, you need space on the debuff bar. Otherwise, you are going to not be able to place it. The other thing to note is it is a fixed 15% drop. I did hear some talks about, well, is it going to be half because of the passive reduces turn meter reduction by half? It is not that. It is a 15% fixed of his maximum stamina. Now, just a note on maximum stamina, that means it is not going to do 15% of his current turn meter bar. It's going to do 15% of the total turn meter bar. So that means if he goes to like 1.2 turn meter bar, he's not going to do 15% of 1.2. He's still going to do 15% of 1, which makes it less valuable the higher he goes up. So that's just an important note. What it basically means is if he exceeds his turn meter bar because of a speed tune you've got, you're not going to gain as much as if it was a target stamina, which is coded differently in the game. There are 2 types of turn meter reduction. Target stamina based on the quantity in the turn meter bar, 1.2, versus max stamina, which is just the 1000 units, the 1 bar. And finally, another thing to note, because you place a debuff and he removes a debuff, you can take advantage of masteries such as Arcane Celerity, which gives you a chance to gain turn meter when your debuffs expire or are removed. So you can try and find extra bonus turn meter speed using some of these masteries as well. So I haven't been able to get past stage 7 currently because I'm struggling with weak affinity. But once I get past stage 7, I'm hoping to try and see if I can get some sort of 100% turn meter drop with freeze. It's looking pretty tough right now at 250 speed. Then we've got Tated Crisis. This is the new Ice Golem boss. The big change here, poisons don't work. Straight up, poisons are not possible. He's immune. You used to go in here with someone like a Bad El, a Tomb Lord, a Frozen Banshee, a Dark Hail, and the way you would bypass his passive, which would activate his revival, is you just do poisons, because only direct damage can activate his passive. You can do it with HP burn, you can do it with poisons, you can do it with smite. That won't activate his passive. We basically cannot use poisons, so you either have to block revive the allies to stop them reviving themselves, or you need to go a different way in terms of HP burn or something of that nature. But you always got to remember when you're doing HP burn, you might do too much damage and revive them anyway. But let's talk about his abilities. Glacial Eruption is a 4 times attack. Again, 33% higher than Dragon. Ice Golem hits a lot harder. His A2, Debilitating Frost, which also cleanses himself now, is a 6 times attack. It's a hefty hit. It's going to really hurt. You need decreased attack on that A2. Otherwise, you are going to die. It's going to kill you. You need decreased attack. And finally, A3, which is the passive activation, is the same multiplier as his A2. And of course, he will revive if you haven't blocked revived. So just to note on the passives again, immunity to poison. So the 60% isn't relevant here. He's got the 10% max HP, and he's also got the same smite debuff. Now let's just talk about the allies a second. What's changed here is the allies don't attack, which they did before. Another thing to note here is the HP burn has an effect on the allies. If you activate HP burn on the boss or one of his allies, then all of the two side allies destroy maximum HP at a rate of 5% up to 50%. That is detailed in the boss guide, but I just want to call it out here. Now, one thing to note is you can also do it with Smite. So I'm not really sure how this works, but essentially if you activate Brimstone on the boss, then allies will destroy 10% of their max HP. That will work, but it does state that if the Brimstone activates on the boss or allies, but in order for Brimstone to activate, they need to use a non-basic ability. They have to use an active ability, an A2, an A3, an A4. They can't use their A1s. But the allies don't have non-basic abilities. They only have their A1. So I'm not sure how this is meant to work, because from all I can see, when the smite debuff gets placed on an ally, they can't activate the smite debuff. So what does it matter? Now that's just probably a typo error, I guess. I don't know. But essentially, you can ignore the concept that Brimstone is going to help you if it's on an ally, because Brimstone will never activate on one of his allies. Now, and the other thing to note as well that they've put on the Ice Golem boss is that HP burn will deal 10% more damage to Crisis, the boss. This is kind of misleading because it makes it sound like HP burn is going to be significantly better, or at least better than other strategies. And it kind of is, just because Ninja and Chronom are so good at killing bosses, but it's not actually having a mathematical major difference. So I just wanted to do some math here to kind of show this. The current stage 10 hard HP of the Ice Golem boss is 7.1 million, nearly 7.2 million, which means that 1 HP burn at 3% is going to deal 215,244. Now, if I give it the 10% bonus, I'm basically doing 10% of 3%. So effectively 0.3% more damage per burn, which means that I actually deal instead 236,768. So my net gain from that passive is about 21k damage per burn. All that really means is if I just did HP burn damage to the boss, I'd need to do 33.333 burns, so effectively 34 burns. Well, now I just do 30.6, which means 31 burns. So I've saved myself 3 burns. It's not really that important. It needs to be like 25% really to make a significant difference, I feel like. I think 10% is just... it's almost like, okay, cool, move on kind of situation. Don't really make a difference. But I just wanted to narrow that out and actually explain the impact of that passive. It's actually quite limited and it's not that big. Now, finally, let's talk about the Spider. Tainted Scavak. Some changes here. She is now immune to HP burn and turn meter control. So Cold Heart can't drop the turn meter anymore. The old strategy of burn, drop turn meter, and let the Spiderlings kill her is kind of there, but not the same. There's we have to make some adjustments because we can't drop the turn meter and we don't want the healing to happen from when she consumes Spiderlings. The big change, however, is when a Spiderling dies, it does 3% damage to the queen. So let's just talk about the actual damage from the boss itself. Her A1 Caustic Weapon will do 2.5 times attack. So it attacks the weakest. It's the lowest incoming damage. But of course, she can increase her own attack from the consumption of Spiderlings. So in a long fight, this gets much stronger and eventually you will lose. Her A2 Torpify will consume all the Spiderlings and then deal 3 times attack. And obviously, again, she heals from that. It's not a good ability if there's lots of Spiderlings up. Some passives to note here. Once again, she takes minus 60% damage from poisons, 10% HP cap as well, so Cold Heart can only do maximum 10%, and 70% smite from the Brimstone. So in terms of just general stats here, she's not going to hit too hard if you get control, but the longer the fight goes on, the harder she will hit. Now let's talk about the Spiderlings in terms of how much damage they do. The A1 attack, they only have an active ability, does 3.1 times attack. So that's obviously quite high damage. So you've got to be careful about that. If you're taking lots of Spiderlings damage, it's going to hurt your champions. And then the death mechanic, the A3, this is where the bug exists at the moment, where it seems to be applying twice. I think the reason this is happening, as well as a couple of other bugs with the Spiderling Queen, where I think the Spider Queen, for example, sometimes in some stages will just keep eating all the time, even though there's meant to be a turn between. I think that's because they've got a typo in their boss mechanics, but I'll leave the experts to figure that out. But the A3 will basically activate if you kill it with Hex, Poison, bomb, reflect damage, HP burn, or direct damage. If the Spiderling reaches 0 HP with any one of those mechanics, it will deal 3% to the queen. But the thing to note as well is obviously Spiderlings are immune to block passive skills because you don't want to block their ability to passively kill the queen. But that is coded in as well. So in terms of the Spiderlings there, I think the bug at the moment is they're just not dying at the right phase. It's almost as if the death damage is phased to happen after damage is dealt rather than after the entire effect of the enemy doing that has happened. So if I've got 2 hits on a champion, it's activated on the first hit because I've died, and then because I haven't actually died because the death mechanic or the Spiderling doesn't despawn until after a different phase, that's why the double damage is happening. I think that's what's happening, but I can't be certain for sure because it's quite complicated. But I would imagine we'll get a fix very soon. So I just want to call out as well here, the stages tool has been fully up to date now with all of the boss data. So if you come into dungeons, you come into something like, we were just looking at spiders, you've got 1 to 10 hard that you can look at the boss speeds, accuracy, different waves. So if we look at stage 10 for the Spiderling here, you can see it's got 14.7k million health. It's got 35,874 attack. The attack numbers are very high. That's why they hit a lot harder. And we can see the speeds are up at 245 here. The Spiderlings are 150. In normal Spider, the Spiderlings are faster than the Queen. In hard mode Spider, the Spider Queen is faster than the Spiderlings. So that's something to note. 7k defense. So, you know, it's going to drop a lot of your direct damage. And pretty much all of the bosses are positioned around these resistance and accuracy numbers. Every single boss at stage 10 hard is the same. 320 resistance, 330 accuracy. So if you want to land your debuffs, you need a minimum of 345 accuracy. If you want to resist the boss effects, you need a minimum of 435 resistance, unless you bring decrease accuracy, decrease resistance, increase resistance, you know, those kind of things. Those can actually have an impact on the numbers, so you need to do the math there. But every single boss at stage 10 hard has the same accuracy and resistance numbers, and they're all around about 250 speed, except for the Queen here, which is 245. So, you know, good luck trying to beat a 250 speed Finite, which also has the 21 shield stack that you need to take down. But as I mentioned, the wave configurations has changed. So for example, stage 10 Dragon here, we can see we've got Leburgers now. Leburgers a Doom Tower champion. We've also got Chagor, a Void Legendary here. We've got Cardinals in here. Now, the HP of these Venuses are quite insane. We are talking 526,000 HP, but they've got 6k defense. Dragon 10 stages have much harder waves than Dragon 25 stages. Dragon 25 normally used to be some of the easiest stages. Compared that to something like Finite 10, we've also got Voids, we've got Venuses, but the Venuses here are only 336,000 HP and 2.3k defense. So Finite 10 hard is a much easier wave to get through. The reho can be a bit of a pain in the backside if you are reflecting effects and various different things. So if you want to see any of the boss data, it's in the stages tool. We will have boss guidance on hellhades.com next week as we start trying to figure out strategies ourselves. The other thing I just want to quickly note, the wave accuracy resistance numbers are a lot lower. So if you want something to do debuffs on the waves but not on the boss, you have the option of running your accuracy numbers lower, just enough to be able to kill the waves, but not anywhere near what you need for the bosses. So keep that in mind. But let's go take a look at the drop rate information for these new hard mode dungeons. So the basic thing you need to understand about hard mode dungeons here is every one stage of hard dungeon, you lose 1% of the rarity from rare drops, and they are split equally where 0.5% goes into a legendary drop rates and 0.5% goes into mythical. So we get 0.5% more chance at legendary and mythical per increase of hard and 1% less of rare. What it generally works out as is every 62.5 runs, which is about 1,250 energy in a dungeon, you will return out of those artifacts at least one 6-star mythical artifact, about 3.6 6-star legendary artifacts, and then on average you're going to get 3 times mythical artifacts overall, whether that's 6-star, 5-star. You're going to get 11 legendary artifacts, 20 epic artifacts, and 28 rare artifacts. So you're still averaging more epic and rares. But what I would say is if you're running stage 25 normal, you're going to get significantly more legendary artifacts. You're going to get about at least one more 6-star legendary. So if you're running 25 and you can do 10 hard, there's no reason for you not to. It's the same energy cost. And as long as the runs are reasonably the same amount of time, then you can. I think the issue right now is Ice Golem and Finite are going to be quite slow. Spider looks really easy to auto farm even after they bug fix it, and I think Dragon will be quite easy to auto farm as well. So those are the TLDR artifact drop rates. Now let me give you an analysis of the which stage should I run? So I had to wait a few days before we actually got the updated tables, because the only place they actually show the tables is when the events are live. So we can see Mythical has now been added to the Dungeon Divers event. Now I'm predominantly focusing on 5 and 6 star because most people, if they are in any sort of progression in the game, will probably be farming something like stage 16 upwards, and typically you're only getting 5 and 6 star at stage 20 at least. So I've been looking at specifically stage 20, 24, 25 normal, and then 1 to 10 hard. But we can see here, I just want to comment, we get 25 for a 6-star mythical artifact, and we get 20 for a 5-star mythical artifact. So essentially a 5-star mythical artifact is equal Dungeon Divers points to a 6-star legendary, and then we get 5-star more for a 6-star mythical. And now in terms of tournament points, they are different to event points. We have to look at them both independently. Tournaments basically grant you it on a sort of equation here. So you basically get 20 for a rank 6 and 15 for a rank 5, and then you get bonus points for the rarity. So it went from 1, 1, 1, 2 on epic, 5 on legendary to 9 on mythical. So basically a 6-star mythical artifact is 29 tournament points. So how does that actually make sense in terms of the energy usage and the odds and all these different things that I've just given you? What is the answer to where should I put my time energy? What stages should I farm? So there's always a 0.5% chance that you're going to get an ancient shard from any stage of these dungeons, and I've factored that into these equations here. Now the one thing to note is most people will probably automatically think I need to run stage 10 hard, which to some extent you probably will want to because it gives you the best odds of the artifacts. But if you're running stage 25 now and you can run, say, stage 3 pretty efficiently, then there's no reason why you would not go and jump to stage 3. Because actually, in terms of the odds, like because we're not increasing energy when we do this, then your tournament points averages, your averages for different legendary champions, it's only going to get better. So if you can farm stage 3 efficiently and fast, but you can't do 10 hard, and you used to be able to do 25, and that's where you would put your time and energy, then 1 to 9 is equally as good. The only exception I would say here is 10 rewards 400 clan versus 1 to 9, which rewards 350 clan versus clan points. So if you're running Spider 10, you need to run Spider 10 hard, realistically, because it's easy enough to do. You want to run Spider 10 hard for that 400 point marker. It's a big difference. Now, in terms of which stage should I farm? Now, if you are interested in 6-star legendary gear or mythical gear, then you want to farm stage 10. Simple as. Most people are farming stage 25 because if they wanted 6-star legendary gear specifically, it returned the best percentage. Didn't return the best gear odds overall. That was basically in 24. But in terms of 25, it gave you the best chance at 6-star legendary. Very minute. It wasn't like by an insane amount, but enough to make it worthwhile. I personally farm stage 25 on everything. So for me, it makes sense that I push as high as I can to get to stage 10. Now, if you want efficiency from a tournament point or a Dungeon Divers point of view, hard mode is not where you want to be, right? So in this row here, we can kind of see averages per run. So every run that I do, I'm obviously going to get more clan versus clan points at hard, and I'm also going to get more tournament points. But when we look at the energy issue, where essentially stage 10 hard requires 20 energy, stage 20 requires 16 energy, the amount of points per refill, 130 energy, is going to be different. So how does that work out? Well, if I was running stage 20 normal, every refill, I'm going to gain 144.7 tournament points or 98.83 dungeon diver points. These are averages. Obviously, you can high roll, you can low roll. We're just talking the average refill. When we go to 24, that drops. You go from 144 tournament points to 131 tournament points, and around 98 divers points goes to 91.69 divers points. So 20 is better already for tournaments. If you're doing the fusion, you're limited on energy, you run stage 20. However, stage 24 does give you much better odds. So we're talking in terms of 6-star epic and legendary gear, stage 24 is going to give you 0.95 per refill. 6-star epic and legendary. You're going to get 0.27 from 0.16 6-star legendary, right? Obviously, you can't get 25% of an artifact, but we're looking at the mathematical averages here. Basically, what this is showing you is you have better chances, you have more quantity of 6-star epic and legendary gear than you do at stage 20. So if you want gear, you farm stage 24, but that is not the best for tournament points. Now, when we look at 25 normal, it jumps up 2 energy. So you actually lose out on the 6-star epic gear. Specifically, you get less gear, effectively, high-end gear. You get less 6-star epic and legendary by about 0.2 or 0.02, but you gain slightly better chances of getting a 6-star legendary. It doesn't really reflect it here because we're rounded. If we were to basically unround it, you would see that actually we go from a 0.267 to a 0.269. So over lots more runs, that will add up, that you will get a bit more chance. It's not mathematically significant enough to say, you know, you should definitely do stage 25 over 24 because 24 is going to give you overall better gear. But in terms of, if your mentality is, I just want 6-star legendary, you run stage 25 before hard mode dungeons. But again, you can see because of the additional energy that requires you to run 25, you lose a lot more tournament points and events. We've gone from 144.7 at stage 20 for tournament points to 119.6. Event points, 98.83 down to 83.37. So that basically means between 20 and 25, it's around 15 to 17% less tournament and event points you're going to get, which means you have to replace that with more energy. It's more energy to complete the tournament events. Now, how does Mythical Artifact affect this? So we know we're going to gain 29 for a 6-star Mythical in a tournament, and we're going to gain 24 in a 6-star Mythical, a 5-star Mythical for a tournament, right? So we're going to get more points for Mythical gear, great, but not enough really to make a difference. So we can see here, stage 1, we will always, stage 1 compared to 25 is always going to be more tournament and event points, right? So if you can get to stage 3 and you used to run 25, then you'll get more tournament and event points than stage 25. But it's not really beating stage 24. If we look at even stage 10 hard here, okay, we're going to get better gear to start with, okay? We know if you care about gear, hard is going to reward you better gear, straight up. We can see the comparison here. Between 20 normal and 10 hard, we go from 0.71 6-star epic and legendary gear to 1.03. And then from 24, which was the best gear farming to begin with, we go from 0.95 to 1.03. Now, it's not crazy difference. It's not like if you're not running stage 10 hard, you're not getting gear, but it's enough to make it worthwhile if you can get to stage 10 hard, right? If we're thinking like Dragon, you should be, if you're a late game account, you should be able to put a team together that can farm stage 10. That'll get you better gear if you're farming Dragon still. Now, if we look at 6-star legendary specifically, well, you can see you go from 0.27 to 0.37. Now, when we compare it to 20 normal, you're almost going like you're doubling. Well and truly, you're over doubling your odds of getting 6-star legendary in terms of quantity. In terms of 6-star mythical, you're getting 0.1 and 0.32. So if you just want mythical gear, it's at a 0.32 rate. If you want 6-star mythical, it's a 0.1 per refill. So again, if you want gear, you go to stage 10 hard. If you want tournament and event points, well, stage 10 hard, the best hard mode, is going to give you 123.14 tournament points, which is more than 25, but it's not as much as 24. So stage 24 and 20 are still going to be the places you want to put your energy and time if you are concerned about energy and you need to do the events. In terms of dungeon divers, it's about 10 dungeon diver points per refill. That will add up. If you need 100 more points, then that's 10 more refills that you have to find. So it's something to keep in mind. That's basically what we'll find out here. Stage 10 hard is the best for gear by far. It's in terms of farming. Stage 20 is the best for dungeon diver points and tournaments. And you kind of have to make the decision, is the gear worth the extra energy? That's up to you. That is totally your choice. But I would say if you were already farming stage 25, you want to try and push hard dungeons. I haven't done a silver analysis. That's a lot more work, and I haven't had a chance to do it yet. And I wanted to get this out before I got to doing that. So there you go, guys. That is the final part of the patch note breakdown. It's a pretty, even though there was not a lot of features, there was a pretty chunky patch to go through in terms of 4 new champions with some unique mechanics and a lot of mechanics to cover in the dungeons. I hope you have taken away some information that will help you. I'm sure we will get a patch bug fix. It might even be out before I've released this video. Let me know in the comments below what your experiences have been so far in dungeons. Let me know if you're going to push these hard mode dungeons to get gear. If you like this video, as always, give it a thumbs up. I do these kind of deep down breakdowns every time we have a patch notes release so that you guys get all the information that often isn't exposed into the game, right? Who knew that there was a minus 60% poison debuff? Because I'll tell you now, if you go into any of these boss guides, none of them tell you that the boss takes 60% less damage from poisons. None of it. It's not listed anywhere in this boss guide. So I do these patch note breakdowns to expose important information from the game that you need to be aware about so you can plan and build teams efficiently and effectively. I will be putting out content in terms of strategies to beat these dungeons. What teams am I thinking about using? Champions that I think are potentially really OP that nobody is maybe talking about. And I will try and build accessible teams for as many players as I can, although I'm pretty sure Finite is going to be very restrictive at the current phase. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.